So going back to misinformation, Andrew, The Voice is an area where misinformation has come into play.
That's right.
And we saw yesterday that Facebook, of course, has now sacked or at least suspended RMIT Fact Check for their work that they were doing for them on The Voice. If you've already got issues with a business that was being paid by Facebook, is this really an ability, a power we want to give to a federal government?
Well, you're absolutely right. The Voice is a great example, and the AEC has already said that there is more misinformation floating out there about the Voice to Parliament than any previous election or referendum that they have seen. The truth is that misinformation is the scourge of our age. It is a real threat to our democracy, and so it is absolutely right that the government takes that seriously and takes steps to stamp it out, because if we don't, we know that it's a cancer that will affect our democracy and affect our system of government for many years going forward.
But I think the problem, isn't it, Keith, that when you start giving that power to a government body, and, you know, it's not going to be given to the minister, it should be said, but it's given to ACMA, the Communications and Media Authority, and if they can start saying or making decisions about what is and isn't misinformation, that's still a government body doing that. Once you give them that power, you're never going to get it back.
Well, you are exactly on the money, and John Howard was right. That's why we have freedom of the press in this country. But I called this out within days of it being announced, and I said then, where's the press? Why are no one picking this up? Well, they're picking it up now, and the idea that a department will determine whether something is a fact or not, and then go to, whether it's Meta or anyone else, and say, you need to look at this and potentially remove it because we've decided it's not factual. Well, I think that is very, very dangerous for our democracy. I think the Australian people understand just how challenging that could be. The idea that a department will be the Ministry of Truth, deciding what is and isn't factual. I mean, look at the debate we're having right now. And as it turns out, even someone on the ABC backed Peter Credlin. I mean, who'd have thunk it?
Well, I mean, just on that point, Keith, the government, including your government, had a range of media standards. And the government was able to determine and implement those standards. And we can determine what is racial vilification, we can determine what is within the media code and what is not. So it's not true to say that we've never had media standards or we've never had any government departments making adjudications and determinations within the media. This is a significant new threat, and it's appropriate to update those laws, which were working well under your government and working well under previous governments, for this new misinformation age.
Well,
it's that simple.
Plenty more to come on that. Speaking of plenty more to come, Qantas, as I was talking about earlier, the Prime Minister, as I said, has sort of distanced himself from the decision not to give 28 extra flights to Qatar, but the intervention today of Peter Costello saying that Qantas is one of the most powerful operators in Canberra sheds some new light, I suppose, on the decisions that have been made. Keith, Andrew, of course, you are both in Canberra a lot of the time. I'm not a member of the Chairman's Lounge, I'm going to declare now. You both may be. What do you see, Andrew, as the power of Qantas as a lobbying group in Canberra?
Well, the most important thing to say in this debate is that Australia has one of the most open aviation access regimes in the entire world. Now, when Australian carriers want to fly to the United States or to Europe, they face restrictions from those governments about foreign incoming flights. Now, the Australian government, this government, Keith's government, the previous Labor government, all placed restrictions on incoming flights by foreign carriers. It is completely standard practice, and that is exactly what has happened in this instance.
Yeah, but I suppose the argument, Keith, isn't it, it's in the national interest? Well, what's in the national interest about denying 28 flights? I mean, it's not like we were saying they're going to take over the country.
Oh, let's call this for what it is. Catherine King's got a hospital pass. That's pretty much what's happened. And the reality's straightforward. Qantas appears to be a protected species under this government. Right? They're a private company. They're an enterprise there to make profits and make money, and they're getting a pretty big hand up from what I can see. And then you've got Labor ministers out there saying that the national interest is not defined. I think I could pick up a high school kid and ask them what the national interest was, and they could explain it to me pretty damn quickly, to be honest. So I just think it's extraordinary, the statements that have been made by Stephen Jones and Andrew Lee. And it just backs the Labor Party into a corner. They've made a decision for reasons which they can't explain. Now, and what happens? It's driving up the cost for every Australian consumer.
Very quickly before we go to a break, I've got to talk about this. It's just so funny. There's been a suggestion out of New Zealand from a departing MP that New Zealand should become Australia's newest state. Barnaby Joyce has now jumped on board with it. Andrew, 20 seconds. What do you reckon? Do we want him or not?
Well, look, if we wanted New Zealand to join Australia, I wouldn't send Barnaby Joyce over with the invitation.
What do you reckon, Keith? Sign him up.
He was already a citizen. He was already a citizen. But, I mean, we love our brothers and sisters across the ditch, but this is a decision for them. They're a sovereign nation. If there's something they want to do, they can put themselves forward. But, I mean,
dear, we've got
the Labor
enough
Party want to give them a vote when they're here.
We've got enough of our own problems, I reckon. Keith, Pitt, Andrew, Charlton, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Carl.